Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. I have a very special guest, Paulina Pantyleva. She is a wife, mother of three triplets, and works as a medical doctor. In 2023, she wrote a book entitled My Secret Life as a Sex Addict: How I Repaired the Damage. It's about her raging sex addiction and co addiction with binge and disordered eating, which she suffered for over 30 years. With lots of therapy, insight, spirituality, and the process of writing her book, she has completely transformed her life. And I'm so lucky to speak with her today. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paulina.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, Gina. I'm very
Of,
excited to be here.
of course, my pleasure. And I also want to congratulate you and commend you for writing this book because I'm sure it took a lot of courage for you to write this. And I just know it's going to help many women who can relate to your
Yes.
story. Yeah, but
Yeah.
before,
So,
go ahead.
mhm. No, no. I wrote the book for myself first. It was about my healing process. And as a result, I think it will help many other women or their partners as well. But it was for selfish reasons that I wrote the book. It totally to put all the pieces of the puzzle together for myself.
That's beautiful. I love that. Now, before we get into sharing your story, I wanted to ask you the significance of the picture of the kintsugi, kintsugi vase
Yes.
on the cover of your book.
Oh, yes. A kintsugi vase is from Japanese culture. It is a vase that has been broken. And instead of regarding the vase as a piece of garbage, um, in Japanese culture, the vase is repaired with gold lacquer holding the pieces together. And the more repair that has been done on the vase, the more valuable the vase is. So I used that imagery as the epigraph for my book, which means that that is the theme of the book is that even though there was a lot of broken pieces in my life, now that it is being repaired, I am that much more valuable because of it, because I have new wisdom. I have insight and knowledge into the cycle of addiction. I understand myself better and all these things, of course, when there's any hardship in your life, as you well know, because you've also had a similar journey, it makes you a much better, stronger, more valuable person.
Absolutely. And we just grow stronger and stronger each and every day. And if you don't mind to share exactly your story and
Mhm.
how it all came, how it started, I should say.
Yeah. So I wrote the book as a at now at age 50. And what brought me to this point in my journey was that I was at that time I was 49 years old, and I was going through the worst binge eating episodes of my life. I was just completely out of control. I was gaining 30 pounds in 3 months or less. And that was a common cycle that I would go through, where I would gain and lose 30 pounds from one year to the next. And I'm 5'3", and 30 pounds is a lot for me. And I was just completely out of control. And I sought out a diet recovery coach to get my binge eating under control. And in the process of doing the coaching for binge eating, I was able to recover my sex addiction. I was not actively seeking sex addiction therapy because that was way too shameful, way too dark, and very difficult to find proper help with that. So their diet recovery is a much more common and mainstream type of therapy. Um, so that's how my healing came about, was due to the coaching. But as far as how my sex addiction started, it started like 99 to 100%, like all addictions. It comes from childhood trauma. So Um, in my situation, I had some sex molestation between the ages of 8 years old and 11 years old. And I have since learned, that definitely creates a hypersexualization of a man or a woman, or it could go the opposite way. It can cause hyposexualization, where a person wants nothing to do with sex. So in my situation, of course, it caused hypersexualization. And at age 11 or so, when the sex molestation came to an end, that's my first memory of binge eating, where I was babysitting for someone, and it was an opportunity to eat candy and hide the wrappers and eat like a pound of cheese and dispose of the wrapper again. And I remember doing that at the house where I was babysitting. So that was the origins of my sex and my food addiction. And I have since learned that there's a very close correlation between sex and food addiction. They kind of go hand in hand. And it's something you may observe like in other women, like if you look at like former porn stars, or any woman who is in the I don't want to say sex worker, but like even like models, like sexy model, or something where they're sexualized. Sometimes when they leave that type of work, you see their weight balloon. And I think, some people may interpret that as like, oh, you're not in front of a camera, or you don't have to do that type of work anymore. But really, something in our brain where the sex and the food centers are very close to each other, and one replaces the other, and it flip-flops. And I address that in my book. So I'm just going to pause just to see if but I can keep talking, but I'll pause.
Oh, no, 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 no. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Yeah, I didn't realize there was a correlation between food and sex. And it's interesting because first off, like I said, I commend you for actually seeking help than for even eating. Some people don't even get help, and they just don't ask for any help. And so that is wonderful that you're able to go ahead and take care of that part, and then like miraculously that actually helps you with curing
Mhm.
your not curing, I should say. With
Yes,
you're
I'm
cured.
cured. Yes,
I guess because
yeah,
you're a doctor.
yes, yes, yeah,
But to
yeah,
help you with
mhm,
your overcome your sex addiction, because you
yeah,
don't hear too many women about having a sex problem. You hear
yeah,
men constantly, or they'll use it as
yes,
an excuse, or use that or
mhm,
that. You
yeah,
know, um, and I wanted to talk to you about how it affected your family. I know you have triplets. You have
mhm,
three kids,
yes,
beautiful kids, and a husband,
yeah,
and
yes,
how that affected your family and how that came about.
yeah. So, I mean, the evolution of the sex behavior. I mean, as a teenager or as a college kid, it at first, it came off as normal. I was very promiscuous. I was definitely sex obsessed, and I was always running off with boys, playing hide and seek, or whatever game or opportunity there was to like have a makeout session, or hang out with boys and just like do sexy time. I was always there. Um, I got married at age 22 to my college sweetheart, and I was still relatively young. And I went to medical school, and in my fourth year of medical school, I had triplets. I gave birth to triplets. They were severely premature, and after I had triplets, I stayed home 1 year and to raise them, and it was very stressful because they had a lot of complications, especially one son. He's still permanently disabled as a complication of prematurity, and that that actually played a big role his disability played a role in my acting out on my sex addiction, because I carried guilt that I caused his disability. And even though I didn't display this guilt like in my regular daily life, because you're going to suppress those types of negative feelings, but I deep down I felt guilty. And so what that caused me to do was to punish myself. Like guilt requires punishment, even though I didn't think of it in those terms at that time. Um, and I would act out on my sex addiction. And acting out meant that I would go on websites and seek hookups with strangers. If there was like a business trip or some sort of opportunity for me to be away from my house and my family, I would go like clubbing or find a hookup situation. So my first marriage dissolved in a short time after 5 years or so. I mean, the sex addiction it played a role, but it was just multifactorial, just the stresses of having triplets and financial insecurity and all of things in life. But then I met my now second husband, and I, of course, wanted to be monogamous and not cheat, quote. But my compulsions would often override any hope of being monogamous. So there were multiple instances where I would get caught, basically, and my husband would break up with me, and it would be a cycle of me being devastated, crying, begging for his return, stalking him, almost like, trying to get him back. And this cycle repeated several times. And of course, that's very traumatic to my family, my kids, to my husband. He definitely has betrayal trauma that he is still recovering from. So it caused, my behavior caused a lot of devastation. And I, what I wanted to address here was that, some people say, oh, like sex addiction, it doesn't exist. It's just an excuse to cheat, or like that's what, men say, like when they get caught, hooking up with the babysitter or whatever. So I this is my rebuttal to that, why it really does exist. It's so my role model in terms of addiction medicine is Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a Canadian family medicine doctor, and he has a very simple definition of addiction. And the four criteria for any addiction are: number one, strong craving; number two is short-term gratification; number three, long-term consequences; and number four, can't stop. And there's no problem like with having a lot of sex, or having like weird sex, or like kinky sex. So that would, you could do that all day and all night, all you want, and that would be number one and number two on that list of the four things that define addiction. But it's number three and number four that make it the addiction. It's the long-term consequences and the can't stop part. So if you cheat once, and you have, some repercussions of it, and you learn your lesson, then that's just cheating, I would say, or that's just, normal human behavior. But if you're repeatedly doing this and you don't want to do it, like I want to stay true to my husband, I want to be monogamous, I want to follow, the expectations of our relationship. But I cannot stop. It's a compulsion that is not in my control. And the long-term consequences are huge. I am exposing myself to STDs and my husband to STDs. There's just the lifestyle difficulty, like, time is like a pie. I can only have so much energy, like to go to work and take care of the kids. And then to go out, and hook up with someone, I'm going to be exhausted the next day. So there's consequences of just my energy and fatigue. There's consequences to the quality of me as a doctor and me as a mother, because I am acting out and not feeling good about myself. So there's many long-term consequences, and still I do this. So the fun part is over. Just like any drug addiction at first, like if you're high on cocaine or alcohol or whatever drug, and it's euphoric and it's fantastic. And then at some point it stops being fun and you're just out trying to maintain your being normal. So that's where I was. Yeah.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. It's
Mm.
hard. Addiction is very difficult. And I was also molested too when I was from the ages of 6 to 12 years old, by a man that the family trusted. And I noticed growing up, I felt like I was very promiscuous, and then I was at a very young age, started doing acts of things. And then I had like even lost my virginity at age 15. And then from there, just had boyfriend after boyfriend, or if I didn't, if I was single, then I was drinking, and then from drinking, then I would have these random hookups, and it was just
Mhm.
like a cycle. And I mean, obviously, I don't have that right now. I'm married, and one partner now, but I noticed I had that behavior and that pattern. It was like my lifestyle. And I wanted to ask you, like, and I was
Mhm.
reading in your book that it wasn't just the act of sex, it was more like the fantasy. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The actual sex was always disappointing, and it was the hunt or the chase or the fantasy of the person that was the the high for me. So, for example, I would be on a website and I would see someone's photo or their description, and I would have like these fantastic thoughts in my mind. I'm like, oh, he's like so hot, and we're gonna like have this amazing, sex, and like, whatever they would write, it would like I would turn it into something fantastical and like mysterious and fun. And then of course when I see this person in real life, it's like a huge disappointment because they're not as cute as their picture. And then the actual hookup is like total disappointment. So it wasn't ultimately it wasn't about the sex at all. It was all about the fantasy of it. And a lot of my addiction was just in my mind, just like planning, obsessing over situations. There's one situation I write about with a hypnotist that I went to for weight loss. And a lot of that affair was me fantasizing um, that the hypnotist and his wife would be friends with me and my husband, and we would have like dinners and hang out together and then hook up and swap like husband and wives, and we would have this like really like peaceful, fun, sexy orgy type situation. It'd be like no hard feelings and everyone would be happy and it would be all puppies and rainbows. So that's and that is not realistic because my husband wants nothing of that. The hypnotist was actually like a very unattractive, ugly person inside and out, and his wife likewise. But I created this scenario in my mind, and that I did that over and over again. So that was that is uh, the real juice of the sex addiction, because the sex, it's not about the sex. Yeah.
Yeah, imaginations, we have big imaginations and we just fantasize things in our head and then some act, some don't, and it just happens. Now, have you ever encountered any like scary experience?
Yes. So I thank God every day that I'm alive, of course. And that is like most addicts, I'm sure. Like there's been so many opportunities where I could have ended up dead in a trench, I say. And so like, one example was I had an online date that I went on, and um the guy was like, not attractive, not my type at all. But of course, I hung in there. And when it was time to drive me home, I was in his car. He pulled into like a dark, like warehouse type of setting where it was like pitch black dark and just very remote and isolated. And he leaned over, started making out with me, and I did not want to have anything to do with him, but I went along with it because I didn't want to be like, those like Dateline episodes where, I anger the person and then like they start choking me and I end up dead and I'm never going to see my family. So I would have sex with this. I had sex with this man just so that he would not be angry and that I would come home. Now, I could have totally made that up. I could have perhaps said, you know what, I'm not into this. Please stop, take me home. And it would have been fine. But I didn't even want to risk that. So, I mean, it sounds silly now, but that's in the moment. I guess I felt some kind of like mild sense of danger, or maybe like because I was so, you know, it, easy to have sex with, that I was just like, okay, let me just get this done so I can go home. So there's many situations that could have ended poorly, such as that one, and also just the risk of STDs, which fortunately I escaped that. But there were other health consequences to my addiction, such as, I ended up having cancer at one point in my life at age 40. And while, initially it sounds like is not related, it absolutely is related, because my mind was sick. And when your mind is sick, it makes your body sick. And it's the mind-body connection. So I was also very angry at God at that time, because I thought, God gave me cancer to punish me or like to teach me a lesson. And really, it was I who gave myself cancer. But all these revelations are more recent. It's as a result of my coaching that I have done in the past year.
Wow. Yes. They say disease is like dis-ease within the body.
Mhm.
And we do create that and we can also reverse it as well. You're a medical doctor.
Mhm.
I'm sure it was
Yeah.
very challenging. Like, I mean, like I've talked to so many cancer survivors and I'm just like, wow, to survive and to live is just like a whole new reawakening, and then start like a fresh start into life. And
Mhm.
then you said that you met your coach. Can you tell
Mhm.
me how you discovered your
Yeah.
coach and how she
Mhm.
helped you?
Yes. So I discovered her on a social media post. She was just advertising her services, and she just kind of um, resonated with me because up until that time, I mean, I've read so many self-help books. I've read books about how to overcome binge eating. I followed, social media um, personalities that were like into healthy living, exercise and healthy eating. And I, none of these things could help me. Like I would try and I would have like a short period of time where I would be healthy and on the wagon, and then I'd fall off and, eat the house and so on. So Coach Dana, specifically, she was a diet recovery coach. She she just like spoke my language. I didn't know exactly. I've never heard of a diet recovery coach until I came across her. So that's why I guess it resonated with me. And it was, she would say, like, are you a person that is hyper focused on your body? Like, do you pick yourself apart? Do you do exercise that is like over punishing to yourself? Are you, you know, there's like a little series of questions, and I was like, yes, I do all these things. And so the way she helped me was she had like a 12-step modules. It's not a 12-step program, but it's like a lesson plan, one per month, to address different aspects of your psyche to overcome um, food disordered eating, basically. So the thing that she helped me with the most was the spiritual part, because I had a very bad relationship with God. And I'm not like religious, and I'm but I believe in a higher power, and I was angry for so many things. I was angry that that God gave me a disabled child because he wanted to punish me, but in doing so, it was my child that was punished with the disability. I was angry that I had cancer when I was a mom to triplets, and I had so many responsibilities. I was angry at so many things, too many to list, like all these bad things that happened over the years. And what Coach Dana did was she showed me that that there was a soul contract, is what she called it, between myself and my disabled son, so that no matter what I did or didn't do, it would have played out the way it did, because our souls chose to be in this life together in this arrangement. Um, and perhaps it was not our first time on this earth, and we had to finish what was started perhaps in other lifetimes. And even if she's completely wrong, I said, even if that's total nonsense, this soul contract, and having it play out this way, it is such a more peaceful way of thinking about the situation and about our life, that I chose to embody that type of thinking, and it disarmed my anger and my guilt right immediately. And from there, everything kind of made more sense about how, because I felt guilty, I sought out punishment. And because I had debilitating stress from being a doctor and financial responsibilities and having 3 kids and one with a disability, I would, on the one hand, try to escape my problems, but in so doing, I created more problems for myself, and it was like this vicious cycle. And also, um, I from my sexual molestation as a child, even, I had guilt even at age 8 and 9, because I thought that I encouraged the sexual molestation, or that I enjoyed it. And that's why I um, that's why it happened more and more. And Dana she disarmed all these beliefs, and that enabled me to forgive myself, to have less guilt. And by those things lifting, it lifted the compulsions as it related to food and the sex addiction. So it wasn't easy, and it's still, ongoing, but she was the only one to effectively put this perspective on it. Um, so I'm very grateful to her.
That is so awesome that you found a good coach, mentor,
Mhm.
and her name is Dana?
Yes.
Dana? Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
hard to find a proper coach, it takes time and you have to want to trust them. And then to open up like that takes a lot of courage. And I wanted to actually go a little bit back and ask you, what was your breaking point when it came to your sex addiction? What was it like, what, this is
Mhm.
it. Like I need to change.
Yeah. Yeah. So at age 48, uh, I thought I had everything under control in terms of my sex addiction, and everything was good. And it wasn't, because I blew up my family at age 48. And what happened was that I went to a tango dance class, a group class. It was the first class, and the instructor um, just magnetically, we there was like magnetism, or an attraction, basically. And over the course of 3 weeks, um, that fantasy world that I created in my mind um, got spun completely out of control, to the point where I wanted to break up with my husband after knowing this man for 3 weeks. And I declared to my husband that I wanted to break up with him. I told my children, I told my parents, and and we broke up, basically. And the same day that we broke up, this tango instructor asked me for money, and I realized that I'd been like manipulated or taken. And um, it was a combination of him manipulating me, and me just having this disorder of the sex addiction, or the love addiction, or this fantasy addiction. So that was the breaking point, because I was like, I'm 48 years old, and I still do this. I still don't have sanity in regard to this. So I needed help desperately. But for the sex addiction, it's much more difficult to find help because it's more shameful. I looked up all these therapists online, and every therapist that I went to their website, I was like, I don't feel like talking to this person or that person. Um, you know, Sex Addicts Anonymous, that was like out of the question. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I was looking at books to read, and they were all like either oriented towards men, or like porn addiction, and or they were like very clinical, written by psychotherapists. Um, nothing resonated with me at all. So I just kind of um, white knuckled it, and like tried. I learned my lesson, and I will never do this again. But that episode is what threw me into the binge eating episode of all. I couldn't regulate my eating. I couldn't regulate my sleep, my mood, anything. Everything was a mess. And that's when I really sought out the diet recovery coach.
Yes, I see. But then your husband has been so supportive because you are back together now, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. And do you find that
And
he's still trying
he,
to?
yeah, like he, oh, you broke up.
Oh yeah, I
I
saw that
lost you for a
too.
moment. I'm sorry.
It's okay,
Yeah,
don't worry about that. We can
yeah,
snip that part
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
I lost you too. I'm like, wait,
Uh-huh.
where'd she go? And then I
Yeah,
probably lost me. No worry, we can
yeah,
snip that part. What I was
yeah.
going to say is like with your
Uh-huh.
husband, did it take some, I mean, obviously it's going to take time. Are you still in the process of mending your relationship?
Yes, every day. He's traumatized by everything. He is also a little re-traumatized because I wrote this book and I'm talking about this on podcasts now. So everything is stirred up again. But I believe in divine intervention, and he is my angel from heaven. It's very corny to say that, but I truly believe that because he has kept me safe over the years from myself. Like if he wasn't in the picture, I would have acted out much, much more, even more out of control. He helps me with life, and I'm forever grateful to him. So I am trying to make amends to him. And my process of making amends is that, I tell him every day how much I love him. I give him a kiss, a hug. I tell him I appreciate him. I apologize uh, for the past, even though I don't, it kind of is more upsetting than it is helpful sometimes, but sometimes I don't know what to say. And I show my love, with it's the five languages, love languages theory, strategy. I try to do acts of service. I show physical affection. I tell him with my words, um, with gifts, whichever way I can. And that will be lifelong because, of course, he has forgiven me, but it's not forgotten what I have done. And the same person as when we first met, where it was more innocent and trusting. You know, trust has been broken so many times that even though this time I say, okay, this is it for good, like I'm healing, I'm in control now, I'm I'm good. Good. There's always that little glimmer of suspicion or the trust is not 100%. So I will forever be working on that.
Yes, yes. That's so awesome that you have a supportive husband and family that love you. I was going to go ahead and also ask you, when you still do, well, first off, do you still get urges?
Much less now because I am rather fresh in my recovery, so I'm very steadfast for now. Um, but I know that I am susceptible to it, and I do like, I'm still human, and yes, my mind has like wandered a little bit, but the difference is what you're if you can stop the actual action, like it, we're all going to have thoughts about doing different things. And over time, I think I'll have less thoughts. But the difference now is that I recognize it, I'm insightful, and I can make it so that the thoughts don't translate into any actions of addiction. I'm not going to act out on it.
Yeah, do you have any like strategies that you use in order
Mhm.
before it gets, I don't think it will ever get to that point again, but I think that, when it's in your head, do you have any coping strategies?
Um, Nothing too like uh nothing more complex other than just like recognizing recognizing it for what it is, that it's, like a fantasy thought, and just letting it rest at that. That's
Yes.
that's
And
the
having
strategy.
awareness, right? Having
Yeah,
awareness is
yes,
most important thing to have for
yes.
sure. And in your book, there was you talked about when you were going to the dry cleaners and someone
Yeah.
told you something that
Yes.
you held dear in your heart. Can you share that?
Yes. So after the episode where with the tango teacher, where I broke up my family, and then my husband ended up coming back to me, I was still walking around. I call it soulless. I was exhausted. I had I couldn't regulate my food, my sleep, my emotions. I was just a shell of myself. And I truly felt like I didn't have a soul. And I walked into the dry cleaners to do an errand, and I was sitting there waiting for my turn. And the gentleman who worked there, he said, um, Paulina, what's the matter? You don't look like yourself. And I just said, I'm feeling a little tired, run down, and I feel a little bit sad. And the other gentleman who works in the dry cleaner chimed in, and he went on this like little side story about how, there's bad people in the world, and some people take your energy or suck your energy, and to regain your energy and basically your soul is what he was saying. You all you have to do is say, God is with me. And he said, God is with you, Paulina, and I hope that you feel better knowing that God is with you. And it was like instantaneous, like in that moment it was like if something could just go up my body, and I was instantly rejuvenated. And it sounds so far-fetched, but this was real. And I walked out of the dry cleaners, and I was said, God is with me, God is with me. And it gave me instant energy and strength, and I felt like my soul like re-entered my body. And even though I still had so much healing to do from that moment, it was critical in my getting better, was getting my soul back that day. And for a person who's like not religious and who had this very tumultuous relationship with God, where I had mostly anger at God, that type of experience, and that type of um, that feeling that I had, it was very real, and it's something that I still carry with me. Like I say God is with me. Like I need God. Yes.
That's so beautiful. I love that. Now, we have a lot of listeners that, listen to this podcast that are going through like an addiction. And what would you tell that person, if they're struggling, what advice would you give them?
Okay. So it's it's like a three-step process to recover. The first step is, it's similar to like any 12-step program. It's like to first declare that you have this problem. So in my situation, I said, I am a sex addict. I am a food addict. I am completely powerless over these things. I need a higher power to help me over. Step two for me was to find a trusted coach, because I couldn't make sense of my past and my traumas and everything that happened. I just had so much anger, sadness, resentment. I was just a hot mess with that. So step two is finding a person that will help you work through this, because I think it's difficult to do on my own, on your own. Like I tried with books, with meditation, with affirmation. I couldn't heal myself. I needed help. So that would be step two. And then step three is to declare yourself free from the addiction. So, which is different from, I think, ultimate, and I'm not the expert on 12-step recovery programs, but I don't think that they have that as the last step where you can say, I am not a sex addict and I am not a food addict. And the reason why that step to me is important is because it it means that you don't live down to that, to acts of the addiction. Um, if I said I am a food addict, it would kind of be almost like an excuse for me to eat out of control more often than I do. And I still do. I still have whereas, like I don't act out on my sex addiction, but I do act out on my food addiction. I go through, a container of ice cream, I'll hit the chips, but I don't identify myself as I'm a food addict or I'm a disordered eating person. That I say I used to have this. And that is because just like I said, I don't want to live down to, it doesn't mean I'm perfect. It's so much better now than it used to be.
Yes, and that's the whole thing that I didn't like AA at all, is because you would go there and you felt like so shameful because you had to say, "Oh, I'm Gina, I'm an alcoholic." But I was
Mhm,
already done with alcohol. I was just trying to do that program and it just didn't resonate with me. I was like, so I
mhm,
totally understand what you're
mhm,
saying. But I
mhm,
am so happy and so proud of you that you've taken the
mhm.
steps to be where you're at right now and then to share your story. And I'm sure writing the book was therapeutic for you.
Absolutely. Yes. And I hope, what can I just like flash it? This is like
Yeah.
this. It has the little vase that I painted it. It's called My
Yes.
Secret Life as a Sex Addict, How I Repaired the Damage. And it's online on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any online bookstore. And I write on with my pen name, Paulina Pantyleva, Pantyleva. And you can also, my email is panties333@gmail.com. It's spelled PPANTIES 333 @gmail. In case anybody wants to share their stories, I would love to hear it. But I think one day I will come out maybe with my real name and who I am, but I'm not there yet, but one day. Yes.
In your own time, no rush.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I will definitely have your information in the show notes where our guests can go ahead and get your book. I read it and I loved it. Very,
Thank you so
very,
much.
very raw material. Definitely some raw material, but
Yes.
I love how you're so transparent and I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Paulina.
Thank you, Gina. It was a pleasure. Thank you so
You.
much. Okay.